Welcome all back to Scott's Sporting Corner. This week we've got a very special guest joining us. He's been on the podcast before under its previous formats, and he's someone Liverpool fans would know from AKM LFC. So welcome back. We have Seano, mate. How are you doing, pal?
I'm very well, Scott. Absolutely delighted to be on and chatting to you. As you know, you're one of our favourites on AKM LFC as well.
So if anyone who's like a new listener to the podcast or isn't familiar with your work, could you give us a bit of detail about your background with AKM LFC, but also your kind of journey before that as well?
Yeah, so I suppose I'll start off with my journey before AKM LFC. I started a YouTube, Facebook, Twitter page, podcasts that was calling, basically asking questions of the owners. I wasn't one of these guys that fell into, oh, I love these guys because they saved us. But I started a group called Fenway We Come Not to Pay back in 2012. So it would have been about 2 years or just a year and a half after they took over Liverpool. The YouTube channel started shortly after that, 2013. I have to give a big shout out to Dunk because it was one of his tripod videos, as we call it, that really kind of spurred me on to do this. And then we started the podcast late, I think it was 2013, 2014. And I gave that up in 2017 after all the hassle that we got a lot of online hate and stuff like that. And I took a break for a while. I kept in touch with Adam, with Dunk from Cop Talk. I actually went over to him for his birthday. And I got to know Adam through that because he had kind of promoted Adam. And we were going to do, myself, Martin, and Adam, and Dunk, we were going to do kind of a big podcast that just didn't materialize. And then myself and Adam decided to do something with Brian Partridge and Martin Mason. And that came 7 p.m. with AKM, or the 7 o'clock slot, as we used to call it.
Yeah, so during that time, kind of before that, what were your experience with like journalism and the media back then?
With Fenway We Come Not to Pay, not very good. I thought like football was about the fans, but football is also about opinions. And I thought that, this was something that you could voice. You can voice your opinion on football. But what I kind of discovered very, very quickly is that they're very defensive and can kind of get quite nasty. And a lot of the stuff that they talk about social media and the cranks on social media and the toxicity was basically started from them. There's no two ways about it. But they were very defensive. They were reluctant to kind of answer any questions that you might have. And I pretty much knew fairly well on, or fairly early on in the whole Fenway We Come Not to Pay days, that they seemed to be kind of an extension to the owners. They're a PR thing with the owners.
Yeah, mate. So, like I said to you before we started recording this, the reason why I reached out to you was because over the last couple of months in particular, I've become quite frustrated with kind of media coverage, kind of journalist little briefed lines they put out there with no kind of substance or personal opinion attached to it. And obviously, I'm no real expert or real passion in this kind of field of it. I know you speak very passionately about it. I've done for many years, got a lot more experience about talking about it than me. Hence why I wanted to get you on, mate. So before we kind of properly kick things off, as of the state of kind of football journalism right now, and also like the media, what's your honest opinions of it right now?
Of journalism in football, in particular Liverpool football,
Yeah.
I don't have very high. I don't have any respect for them, if I'm honest with you. There's maybe a handful that I would have respect for, who are honest and who tell it how it is. But the majority of the Liverpool journalists that I see and hear of are very much part of the PR spin. very much regurgitate the same as the main journalists would do. My way of looking at it is that if you're in university and you're doing a thesis on something, if you were to kind of copy word for word or copy what your fellow student is writing about and reword it, you'd be done for plagiarism. And to me, not only is it kind of saying the same thing, it's one opinion and one opinion only. And I'm very kind of disgruntled by that. And I think the further that you move away from Liverpool or that clique, the more likely you are to get an honest view on things. And that, like, I just basically think they're very much. I remember Dunk talking about FSG, and he was in Boston, and he was told that the owners manage expectations. And what better way to manage expectations but to use your own? And I think that's a case. I think that's what these journalists are doing. And there's a lot of YouTube suck-ups that do the same thing.
Yeah, mate. So like I said, I obviously getting quite frustrated recently with it, and the
Yeah.
main reason why I get frustrated is just kind of what you mentioned. Then is kind of the copy and pasting, just the same line being posted out there. What I want to see from a journalist is someone who, yeah, put out what you've been told, but add your opinion, add kind of what you've heard, or just a little bit more meat to the bone, if you know what I mean. So looking at that, what would make a good modern day journalist to you?
Well, it's funny, and I never thought I would say this. I mean, I of course I'm Irish, and been. I mean, we've had fantastic World Cups, Italy '90 and USA '94, and one of the most controversial, cutthroat journalists that I've ever seen on TV or as a TV pundit was Eamon Dunphy. And Eamon Dunphy, he also was a ghostwriter for Roy Keane's autobiography. And anyone that said anything about Roy Keane, like, he would call it out. I mean, there was one poor, unfortunate journalist that wrote something about Roy Keane, and Eamon Dunphy on live TV says that's the guy that ran off, left his wife and ran off with a young one. So, like, Eamon Dunphy is the other extreme. He tells it how it is, whether it's, whether it's politically correct or not. And I think we're definitely missing that. That's the kind of journalist that I like, tells it how it is. You also have the likes of Steve Nichols, who is on NBSC or whatever channel it is. And he's very confrontational, or he's very kind of upfront and tells it how it is. He's not been given that sort of spin that he has to say this, this, and this. So I kind of like those journalists or those pundits. And I mean, if you go to like a Liverpool Legends night, you'll see kind of John Aldridge speaking the truth, Ray Houghton, Steve McMahon speaking the truth. I think that's where it needs to get back to.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I want to take you back a little bit, about a month or so, or a few weeks or so,
Yeah,
when Arne Slot got sacked from Liverpool, and in the build-up to that period, all we kept hearing was like, obviously, the club are kind of steadfast behind him. There's going to be no end of season review, and obviously, it turns out there was a season
yeah.
review, and Arne Slot did lose his job. What did you make of that whole kind of build up to that end point, if you know what I mean? Did you truly believe what they were saying, or did you think that it would come to Arne Slot losing his job?
You see, the difference between me and others is I don't believe anything I see or read unless I see it for myself. And I question every single one of them. I mean, there was a lot of gaslighting of the fans from some of these journalists, that you had to think a certain way. And a lot of the information that was put out there, I mean, if you look over the months, in particular this season or last season, there was a lot of contradictions. So I thought that it, like, anything could happen, but it's just not going to be publicized, or it's not going to be reported like that. So, I mean, I wasn't overly surprised that Arne Slot was going to be sacked. Um, I think, but I don't think the journalist could say whether he was or not, you know. But it's kind of funny to see them now kind of scamper after he was he did get the sack, and they were like, "Oh, this just happened," and this was a you know a decision out of the blue, which was a load of bullshit. There was no decision. I mean, this decision was made a long, long time ago. Let's just face it. But these guys are trying to get credibility back, and they're failing miserably. So I didn't really read too much into it. Obviously, when you're doing a YouTube channel and you're part of a podcast, like you have to kind of read some of these things, and I think a lot of it is spin and clickbait. So I didn't think much of it.
Yeah, I remember when I kept seeing them, and they're saying obviously they're steadfast behind him. They're not going to give him a review. They're going to give him time. They're going to give him this window to fix it. I just kept telling myself I will not believe it until I see a new contract extension. Because
Well,
I just
that's
don't.
it.
Yeah, I didn't see a
That's
world
it.
where we could go into next season with Arne Slot with less than 12 months left in his contract. And like you mentioned it then, that it's interesting how the journalists have now tried to write articles, since he's been sacked, or this is the reason why we were shocked. They're kind of trying to change that narrative. What do you think of that? Do you think they were caught off guard? Do you think they were just being managed by the club? I always find it interesting when you see them articles when I think Dunk's mentioned it before when
Yeah,
these journalists give you the kind of every step of what happened, but it's afterwards, if you know what I mean.
exactly. I think, and I mean, don't put it like I'm not on X or Twitter or whatever you call it. I'm not on that, so I mean, I can only go on what other people have told me, and I know that Dunk had put up a tweet or an X. What do you call it? An X post now, I suppose you don't
I
call it
think
a
so,
tweet.
yeah.
But he had a kind of breakdown of, okay, this guy said this on this date, and then he went back and he said this, 2 months later. And I thought, if you were to frame something as proof of the level of journalism that cover Liverpool Football Club and the YouTube suck-ups, like, I mean, it's not just, it's not just the focus isn't just on the media. A media covers social media, but it's not just the journalists; it's the YouTube suck-ups, and like it's just a walk and talk and contradiction. And I really think it shows that these guys have no credibility whatsoever, none whatsoever.
Yeah. I think I've said it on here, I've said it probably to you as well in the past. I class a lot of these journalists as kind of PR merchants for the club. They're
Yeah.
basically just press officers in a way. Do you think that's kind of fair criticism, or do you think that's not really fair, or what do you think of that?
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, if you look at, I mean, I don't know of any other club that have their journalists that cover the club going off and doing podcasts and going off to different networks and talking this, talking that. They've done the circuit and they're doing it quite a lot. And they're going to small YouTube channels and big YouTube channels. And it's to me, it's very obvious, especially when you see David Ornstein with a Boston Red Sox hat. You know what side his bread is buttered. So I mean, it's so fucking obvious. But I don't think it's a fair. I don't think it's unfair to say that they're pin or PR merchants or spin merchants. They are 110%, and this is not like a crazy conspiracy theory of a 47 plus year old man. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is very much in the pudding.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think? I know you've alluded a bit earlier on how FSG
Yeah.
manage everything, but why do you think over the last 10 years or so we've kind of gone down this route with kind of journalism and media coverage?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it's. I think it's unique insofar as with Liverpool Football Club. And maybe because I don't really give a crap over any other club, but I just think, nowadays there's YouTubers that are now becoming journalists, and it seems like they don't need a degree or a diploma, or they don't need to study a master's in journalism or anything like that. They can just come straight off the bat and be one of those journalists that'll ask a question in one of these interviews. But I think nowadays, I think the club know that bad PR is bad for the club, bad for everyone. And I think, especially during times of change, or difficult times, positivity is key. And I think what they have now done is they put these journalists and the YouTube suck ups up against a barrel and said, well, listen, you have to do this in order to get your exclusives. And I think that's where it's at. And I think John W. Henry and co. And he wouldn't be the only one. And I mean, I can understand as a businessman he doesn't want any bad publicity, but I think he understands the power of media. I think with Linda being part of Boston Globe, I think they understand from their other business ventures that it's important to have good media. And I think, we see control in media in general. So it was bound to kind of go over to football at one stage or other.
Yeah, I mean, playing slightly devil's advocate, one thing I do like is you see it with other clubs where news breaks before, like you saw the Pep Guardiola news come out
Yeah.
before the club had the chance to announce it. I know it was right why the report that Pep wasn't happy when it came out because they were due to play the Bournemouth game. One thing I do like is, for example, when Klopp announced he were leaving, it didn't get out one bit. So that is the kind of positive of it. But I understand there's obviously you can't have one without the other, kind of, if you know what I mean. It's over
Yeah.
controlled, if you know what I mean. It's about trying to find that right balance in between. But obviously, we're talking about the journalists as well. And do you think the kind of relationship between journalists and fans? Do you think there is kind of, how do I word it? That kind of journalists look down at fans when they try and give their opinion towards them.
Absolutely. 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 Look at Pierce. Where the net spend boys now. So, I mean, are you making the assumption that there are, a section of the Liverpool fan base that are unhappy that Liverpool have won a game based on their opinion of the owners? That is the biggest, and I mean that's been thrown out there by the likes of Mo Stewart and Garrett Roberts, and I've had chats with Garrett Roberts, and maybe he's taken me up wrong in some things, but I am deadly serious when I say this. For you to put out the narrative that some Liverpool fans are happy for Liverpool to wobble in order for you to win a squabble is the biggest lie out there. The reason why these fans are so passionate and have an opinion about these owners is because they love the club. Now, whether you agree with it or not makes no difference. But for James Pearce to say, we're the net spend boys now, and for Chris Bashcombe to go on and say, oh, crocodile or Olympic crying, which he's taken down, but we see it all the time. We see it all the time, even with some of the big Liverpool, so-called big Liverpool YouTube channels, Redmen TV, Anfield Rap, up until maybe a couple of years ago, were fairly vocal in if they didn't agree with your opinion, they would slate it. And then they would act, all God Almighty, and delusions of grandeur, and we set the narrative, and this is all toxic, and we're not toxic. But definitely, 110%, the journalists. If it was any other profession, Scott, you would be told by your boss, "Cool your tits on social media. You're giving the company a bad name." So for these guys to go on like absolute internet trolls and to spur on this thing and to put out a narrative that is completely false, shame on them.
Yeah, if when we talk about a lot of the things what journalists say as well, and like when I do this podcast, I always, before I say anything, write anything, or do anything, I always abide by kind of two rules I've always said. Number one, can I factually back up what I'm saying? That's kind of
Yeah,
just my sports science coming back into me. And would I be comfortable saying it to their face?
yeah,
They're always two things that I say to myself before. It's held me. Sometimes I've stopped myself saying stuff because of it, but 9 times out of 10, I'll just say it anyway because I always back myself. But when it comes to a lot of journalists, when you read the articles, there's some tough articles out there, two very, very critical ones at times. But when it comes to kind of press conferences, kind of pre and post match ones, it seems the line of questions a lot softer
yeah.
from them journalists. Why do you think we don't see them hard hitting questions anymore from journalists?
Because they would be turned down. I mean, if you look at Alex Ferguson and when he was Man United manager, and he didn't like a question, he would ban those journalists for a week or 2 weeks or maybe a month. And then when they were let back in, he would give them a warning that, okay, you're back, but you've been warned. And I think that has become sort of the trend now at Liverpool. Um, it's like if you look back, and there's a fairly well-known video on YouTube, uh, Leicester City, Nigel Pearson, and there was a bit of a to and fro between the journalist and Nigel Pearson, and it was fairly heated. I mean, to the point where he asked a question. Nigel Pearson said, "You must be either very stupid or have your head buried in the sand." And I mean, there was this, and then it carried on the following week where another journalist defended that journalist for asking the question. And I really am disgruntled by the kiss ass and at these press conferences. I don't understand why there's not, I could look at a press conference and I could say, well, hold on a second. You didn't ask this question. You didn't ask that question. You didn't ask that. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And it makes no sense to me. But it's got very watered down. And I think it's cheating people. People pay for or not prescriptions. They probably pay for a prescription after having to pay a subscription to this crap. But they pay a subscription to read this. And they've been cheated out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we you kind of need a balance, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't want like the really soft, watered down questions. Obviously, everything gets put through the press officer anyway, but at the same time, we don't want the other end where it's just a slagging match back and forth. You want to try and find that nice balance in between. And unfortunately, it feels like even when I was a kid, like 20 years ago, it's watered down from them, but or even before then, it's watered down from then as well. And the kind of next one I want to touch on is probably one of your favourite topics, mate, to be honest with you. We talk about different fan channels. So where do you sit on with the modern day kind of football landscape? Where do you think fan channels sit in with them?
I mean, I've seen people kind of run down fan channels quite a lot. I mean, you only have to look at Gary Neville and Mark Goldbridge, and now Gary Neville has bought over Mark Goldbridge, so it mustn't have been that bad, Gary, if you've bought it over. So I do think that they have a positive part to play, and they give people the alternative of having a different view without being criticized. Now there are YouTube channels that are on the other extreme where they're embarrassing, like Arsenal Fan TV, for example, and they're clickbait merchants. So you get that, but I think all in all, I think you get maybe a handful that are credible because they shoot from the hip and they say it how it is, and they don't buy into the PR. But there are very, very few channels out there that do that.
Do you think that fan channels, just in general, this
Yeah.
is, they give fans an opportunity to have a voice?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, some of them do and some of them don't. I mean, you get channels that are very much, this is my opinion. If you don't agree, fuck off. Where I think with AKM LFC, we give people a platform to voice their opinion. And if it's different to ours, we have a conversation. And you've seen yourself on 7 p.m. with AKM, you have the likes of Bond that may not agree with me, but it's a good kind of healthy debate. And I think that's what's been missing with Liverpool YouTube. And I think that's gradually starting to come in. And I think the more of that, the better. Because I think, again, you have a lot of YouTube, Liverpool YouTubers that court the media and sell out so that they can keep their exclusive, so they can be, the ones that stand out from the rest. But I think now it's gradually starting to open up to other channels, other alternatives that are more honest and more the kind of opinion that you'd hear in a pub or in a stadium.
Yeah, and I think as well, obviously, fan channels, like you said, they give people a chance to voice their opinions, out there. But I think a really good fan channel as well, it's someone that creates that sense of community. I think AKM's fantastic with that. I think Cop Talkers as well. There's some other good ones out there as well. But I think the problem is with I find with a lot of fan channels is they kind of feed off of tribalism, where if you kind of have an opinion what's not there, you can't have like a grown-up discussion or debate like you mentioned. Then it's like they have to have this kind of where it's our view or not your view. And I personally believe that's created the kind of modern day kind of what we see online, the constant, you can't have a difference of opinion. Do you think it's unhealthy for the kind of fans nowadays, the amount of tribalism online and in different groups that there is?
I think it's toxic. I think it's criminal and toxic when you have, someone on Sky Sports talking about the plane over Anfield that was against the owners and saying they're cranks, or, these aren't local fans. Well, how the fuck do you know whether they're local fans? Or for someone to report that, oh, I asked everyone in Anfield and they were absolutely, mortified. I think, there would be people that feel that they can speak for the rest of the club or the rest of the fan base. And listen, whether people like it or not, the majority of the fan base is outside of Liverpool. That's just a fact. And I feel that we see a lot of the main Liverpool channels and those that would class themselves as local and, with more credibility than most, you see them creating a divide within the fan base. Oh, well, you're an armchair supporter, or you're, how many matches have you been to, or do you go to away games? And that seems to be kind of now the norm. And it's racist, it's stupid, it's childish. I couldn't care less, how you get your ticket, but don't be slating people who can't get a ticket. Because the ticket, and you also see now these people giving out about the ticket prices and about the way the tickets are done, and will blame the out of towners, as they call them. And I just think that's got to stop.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to kind of like fan channels in general, obviously, like I spoke about, there's a lot of good things. There's like the community base with a lot of them. There's the kind of voice of opinions with what fans maybe not be able to get, which is the kind of positives of it. Like I mentioned there is that kind of toxicity as well. Do you think deep down though that a lot of them they kind of use that to, how can I word it? A lot of channels make a lot of money off of toxicity.
Oh
You
yeah,
know, they
yeah, yeah,
they kind of thrive off it because when a team's, you see, I think Arsenal fan TV is one of the best examples because their viewing figures are a lot higher when Arsenal lose.
yeah.
And they have them really big arguments, debates outside the Emirates. Do you think that is one of the main issues why it is like that?
I think there's certainly a good argument for that. I think, I don't think it would be completely far fetched to think that that's not realistic. I think, in some cases you may, if Liverpool are playing badly, you may get a drop in viewers because they just can't be arsed, or you may get more viewers because they want to voice their opinion. And in terms of toxicity, we see that this Arsenal Fan TV are renowned for that, and I think probably the delusion is probably the worst thing that they're renowned for. But they certainly are well known because of the toxicity, because of the way they act. And I mean, you've seen your man, what's his name, from Talk Sport even talking about it. But that's how they get their name, and I think that's probably how they get their subscribers. I'd like to think that Liverpool fans are different. I really would. But,
Yeah. I think TalkSport's another example. Even though I do listen to TalkSport,
yeah.
I think once you realise there's like certain people on TalkSport where you can tell they're just doing it to get people calling in. I think Jason Cunn is a great example, where his main job is there to get people to ring up angry. Once you realise that's his job, when you actually hear him speak properly, you think, oh no, you can tell he's played at a decent level. But it is that he is trying to create people to ring in. I think another example, I remember I was listening once when I was training. Mike Owen was on for like an hour special, and I thought, I can't bother to listen to Mike Owen for an hour. But deep down, when you actually hear his proper footballing opinion, you can't understand why he's played at such a good level, if you know what I mean, like a top level, which it kind of surprised me when they get the chance to hear him properly speak, if you know what I mean.
I would question whether Jason Cundy played at any level, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, he was given out about what you call it, Virgil van Dijk. And within the first 5 years, Virgil van Dijk surpassed every figure, stat that Cundy did in the 12 years that he was a footballer. So I'm not doing a John Terry on it, but maybe I am. I don't think Cundy has a leg to stand on in terms of criticising. And I could not find it within myself to give that guy any sort of credit. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the big debates at the minute as well. It's what kind of stemmed as well. It's the John Terry versus Van Dijk thing. And it got so toxic at one point. But I think, like I was just saying then, that people kind of have difference of opinion. Like, it is allowed. It just in football. But no, it's like when you mentioned Mo Stewart then. Like, obviously, you've got your opinion on Mo Stewart. My opinion on Mo Stewart is that when I watch the press conferences, he's the one who brings a different type of question. You can tell he does his research and his facts, and I enjoy his question in the press conference. Mm-hmm. But that's allowed. We can have differences of opinions, if you know what I mean. But it's like in today's day and age, it seems we're not allowed to, if you know what I mean.
The only time, Scott, that I'll be critical of with Mo Stewart, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't listened to him, I haven't watched him on what he does in interviews and what have you. If he asks the real hard-hitting questions, fair play to him. But when you then go and you paint a picture where you believe that Liverpool fans would like to see Liverpool wobble in order to win a squabble, I think you're bang out of order and you're putting out a fake narrative that just does not exist. And himself and Gareth Roberts did that. And then Gareth Roberts was talking about the toxicity online and then refers to people that opposes or questions these owners as 40-year-old virgins living in their parents' basement. So I think they very much add to the toxicity they talk about. And, I unfortunately have been involved in that toxicity through Fenway. We come not to pay. Sometimes you become the beast that you don't want to be or the beast that you hate. And then that's when you need to drop out of it. But if Mo is good with asking questions, brilliant. But don't go and slate other fans for a difference of opinion. That's where you lose my respect.
Yeah, definitely. So talking about obviously fan channels and all that type of stuff,
Mm.
let's bring it back to AKM LFC. What is the plan? Where do you want to take it? What is the overall plan for you guys?
Well, I mean, I'm a small clog in a big wheel, and I think Adam has big plans for the channel, and certainly he's shared some of that with me, and some of the things he hasn't shared. And I think without me, he'd be hitting the stratosphere. To be honest with you, his goals are fairly high. And the way I look at it is I try and contribute as much as I can and bring a different side to it. But with that in mind, it's Adam's channel, and what makes AKM LFC is Adam. So what I would like to do with the channel is obviously by the end of the year hit 5K. I think that's doable. I think we'll do a lot more with the VIP members section. We're not going to sell out, but we're going to give people the opportunity of us being able to give something back with the spot prizes that we do, the draws that we do, and our current sponsor Sean Leonard Art. But I think do what we're doing, do more of the same, and then add a little flavor to it. And I think there's some big plans ahead, and it's exciting to be part of it. It for me to be part of a channel that's so positive is such a difference to what I was with Fenway We Come Not to Pay. So it's I'm very excited to be part of it, and whatever Adam wants to do, I'm down with it.
Yeah, it kind of brings me to my next question, mate. Obviously talking about the previous channel and stuff you were doing.
Yeah.
How much have you enjoyed being back creating that content, or whatever you want to call it? How much have you enjoyed being back online?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, when I went over to see Dunk and I stayed a week up in his, he was talking about why don't you get back into YouTube? Why don't you get back into YouTube? And for someone who's not very comfortable, and certainly Fenway We Come Out to Pay was very much out of my comfort zone and something I'd never thought I would do. The anxiety that brought me and the hassle and crap that brought me, I swore that I would never, ever get back in front of a camera or do YouTube. And I did work kind of in the background with YouTube channels in the past and try to offer advice on what they should do or shouldn't do. And some of them took and some of them didn't. To be back with like AKM LFC, there was kind of like a period where I was very anxious. And certainly when I did an interview with Adam about my experience, which was basically me getting 7+ years off my chest. There is that anxiety that you've maybe said something, you've gone too far with this, you've said this, you've said that. So there's always that conscious thing where you're worried about saying too much or you're worried not saying enough. So maybe that's old age, but every Monday I love doing 7 p.m. with AKM. I love doing the match watch alongs. I love the community that we have. Like I've met Muscusi, I've met you, I've met Doug, Brian Partridge. I've met him, in with Dunk and when he came over to one of the Legends games. So it's really cool. And I mean, we're like Jay Garrett is in contact with me. There's so many people that I wouldn't have got to know had it not been for AKM LFC, and I think I owe an awful lot to AKM. But it's great. I mean, I love the banter. Myself and Adam hit off each other well. Martin kind of can come in and he'll throw a spanner in the works, and then we're playing off each other, which is it. Like we love it, and the viewers love it, and I think it's great. I mean, it's so refreshing and it's so cool. But I absolutely love AKM LFC. I love being part of it.
Yeah, and I think the key thing as well, what reason why I like listening to you, mate, is even though, like I said, everybody's got different opinions, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You've got a proper genuine passion as well, and it comes through. And I think when we spoke about the kind of toxicity online as well, and I think what I've noticed recently with AKM LFC, as it's growing, I think the best example to give is when you did the predictions for the final run in of the season, and people are starting to like give you that kind of hostility, toxicity back
Yeah.
where they're kind of clipping it and going, "Oh, look what these guys have said." How have you navigated that?
Well, again, they're entitled to their opinion. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of shut off, to be honest with you, if there's negativity. I'm not on X, so I don't see any negativity or anything like that, which is kind of rampant in X. I mean, I remember going back on for about 4 weeks, and there was some one in County Sligo in Ireland that claimed that she knew everybody from Fenway. We come out to pay and we don't go to the games or whatever. So I shut myself away from that because I'm look, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I understand that. I get that. There'll be some people that will remember a few outbursts that I had after a reaction to the online crap that I got, and that's fine. If they want to stick with that, that person is no longer there. So the criticism that we got over the last 11 games. Well, guess who was nearly fucking right? Like Adam got it on the dot. On the dot. Myself and Martin were 1 point behind them. So, do you know what I mean? So, I mean, for all the criticism we got, I was nearly trying to go back to that original post where we got slated and maybe have a tumbleweed emoji and seeing what people would say then. And it's not a case of it's not the case of like what Mo Stewart and Garrett Roberts said. In order, I'm happy to see Liverpool wobble because I won a squabble. That's not the case at all. But I'm not thinking with rose tinted goggles. This is what I think Liverpool will do in the last 11 games. Am I happy about it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I can understand that might not be great hearing or great view, or people may not want to see that, but I'd rather be honest and criticized for being honest than being a mug or one of the sheep that follow the herd.
You know what I find funny about that as well? I remember watching it when you did it, and I actually sat there and thought, "Come on, lads, we're going to get more than that."
Yeah.
But the thing is, this is the whole point of this episode is I obviously disagreed then, but I wouldn't go on and slag you off. I'd be like,
No.
"Oh, that's your opinion. I think we'll get another 10 points or something more than that." But obviously we didn't anyway. But everyone can have their own difference of opinion. But unfortunately, in the online kind of world, you can't, like it seems of it. So when it comes to kind of the future of kind of football media, if you could change one thing, like as of tomorrow, you could change one thing, would there be something in particular you want to change?
Oh Jesus! I mean, you'd need another show to go through that with me. I mean, I changed everything about the Liverpool media and I mean Liverpool YouTube in general. I mean, I would have said, make Liverpool YouTube great again, but I'm not a Trump supporter, and I don't really believe that Liverpool YouTube was great to start off with. I think it's been dictated to. And I would really like, a media that asks the hard hitting questions, regardless of whether it upsets a few or, whether they won't talk to them in the next conference. I don't want the club or anyone in the ownership to hold owners, or sorry, to hold the media or any Liverpool YouTube channel under a barrel or over a barrel and say, if you don't conform to our way of thinking, if you don't put out positive stuff, you're not going to get exclusives. I think that is crazy. I think that's, I mean, speaking of Trump, that is Trump in America. You know, everything is fake news until, you know, there's something positive about him. So it can't all be positive at Liverpool. I mean, you've got to be realists. And I'd love to see that change. I'd love to see the tide turning in the direction where they're looking for an honest opinion. They're not looking for something that's spun by Joyce, by Pierce, by Ornstein, by Bashcombe, and then eventually goes to Fabrizio Romano. I don't want that. I don't want regurgitated stuff. I want to hear what Steve Nicholas has to say. I want to hear what John Aldridge has to say, because John Aldridge is a fantastic reporter or writer, pundit. Fantastic. If you ever go to the Liverpool Legend Nights and you listen to him, I mean, he doesn't pack any punches. So I'd love journalists to be like that. And I'd love Liverpool YouTube to not measure someone's opinion based on whether they're local, how many games they've been to, have they been to any away games. That shit is crazy, and that's childish, and that's what breeds the toxicity. And I mean, there've been some YouTube channels that have talked about religion, and that's just, it's crazy. Liverpool is my religion, so I think we need to get down to the very basics and look for credibility in social media and on the journalists. Ask the question, why did you rip up the contract of Mohamed Salah? Why is Edwards back? Why is Ward back? Why did they go in the first place? Why did Julian Ward go then shortly after? Why does a Premier League side have a sporting director on a 3-month contract? Why have we had so many chops and changes in the medical staff, in the coaches? Why aren't these questions been asked? Or, you know, why weren't there have been questions asked about Jen Chang, who was the head of communications, who went after this Duncan Jenkins ex profile who claimed to be a mole, and he went and he threatened them. There's no talk about that. There's no talk about, no questions asked of it, and I think it's a disgrace. I really do. I mean, so I would love a complete change, a complete clean slate, wipe it clean. That's what I'd like. And some professional, hard-hitting journalists that ask the real questions.
What do you think it would take for that to happen? Do you think it would need like a change in ownership, maybe a different restructuring at the club? Or do you think it's like pretty much impossible to achieve that nowadays in the media?
Well, I think once you make your bed, you have to sleep in it. And I think a lot of these journalists, although I go back to Pierce was talking about, you know, where the net spend boys. And then 6 or 7 years later, he's like, oh, the net spend is dreadful. So, you know, people remember these things. And I don't think they can win back credibility. I don't think it's even down to the owners, to be honest with you. I think it's just this thing. If you want to have exclusives, you have to spin a certain thing. We've seen it with, you know, Frank Carlisle, with Dunk from Cop Talk, how the club have approached him and said, well, you have to say this and whatever. So I think in order to get rid of that, there would need to be a massive reset button. Do I think it's possible? Absolutely not. But I do think what we will see is, you'll see less subscribers to these spins, these PR spins, less subscribers to these YouTube suck-ups, and you'll see them shifting. And that's what might change everything in terms of the reporting. But these guys will still be in jobs.
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, mate, is there
Mm.
anything else you want to add on the subject, on the topic? Anything out there you want to get off your chest before we do wrap it up, mate?
I just think, from my point of view, I think, if you're in a pub or if you're in at a game and you're talking to the person beside you, whether it's a friend or a complete stranger, you wouldn't disrespect them for having a difference of opinion. And I think that's where social media should be at. And the only time I will ever be critical of someone is if they're critical of other people having a difference of opinion to them. I think we need to get back to respecting people, and the stuff that has been thrown at people just for a difference of opinion. And I can tell you from uh, my situation, I've had my family, I've had work, I've had my personal life involved, and it's toxic. And these people can justify this till the cows come home. There's no justification in that. So I think people would want to wise up to these people and broaden their horizons. Check out your Steve Nichols. Check out John Aldridge. And just be fucking nice to people. We're all Liverpool fans. There's some people. I mean, Brandon, my Reds underscore 97. One of the funniest guys. He does fantastic sketches of Slot and Chiesa. They all think he looks like Chiesa. And I mean, he is hilarious. He's from South Africa, and people are saying, "Oh, well, you're not a real fan. You don't go to Liverpool games." He'd have to pay a bloody year's salary to get over. Like, are you really going to discredit him or try and discredit him on the basis of where he lives? That shit is crazy, and that's got to stop. And people have to stop being absolute dickheads to people. If you don't agree with them, go elsewhere. It's like a TV channel. You're not going to watch Love Island if you don't like Love Island. I think people are. I think it's getting to a stage where it's affecting people's mental health. And I know, for me, after Fenway we come out to pay, I nearly fell out of love with football. I was nearly scared of going over to Liverpool because of the sort of stuff that was thrown at me. And I see it. Paddy Murphy. I see it with Craig Holden, and whatever you think about Craig Holden or Anfield Agenda, he's the third biggest YouTube channel out there and the most watched. So that, in a way, shows that there is a spin and there's a change. So just remember what "You'll Never Walk Alone" means. It's more than an anthem. It's a way of life, and people need to wise up and respect that. Whether you're born in Liverpool or born outside of Liverpool, we're all part of the Liverpool family, and people need to remember the real Liverpool way and the real Shankly way. And this has not been communicated properly through certain Liverpool channels and certain journalists.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And if I was going to add one thing onto that as well, I think we all watch football or get involved with football or any sport really is like a way of an escape,
Yeah,
to kind of break away them 90 minutes per week, just to forget about work, financial issues, probably stress with relationships, God knows whatever else.
absolutely.
And we just don't need that other kind of toxicity on top of that. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the podcast. So if anyone wants to catch more of Seano, you can find them at AKM LFC. Like I said, they do a live show every Monday at 7 o'clock, which, it's great. I watch it most weeks when I can. I think as well, Seano, he loves a good little rant video every so often as well, which is always cool to watch. But yeah,
They're
thanks for
not as
coming on,
bad.
mate.
They're not as bad as the Fenway we come out to pay days though.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Scott.
And yeah, thank you all for listening to this episode of the podcast. If you're new around here, please make sure you drop us a follow, drop us a subscription on there as well. And yeah, thank you all for listening, and we will catch you all next time.